Hello, everyone. We are just waiting for the first participants to join. Here we have attendees. Okay, I see. Great. We have got already a couple of people that came in. We have got a chat function at the bottom, so it would be great if you can just say where you're coming from, and yeah, so we can get the show going in a few minutes. So I see, yeah, Peggy is here from Switzerland. That's great. We have got clients from Germany, Cape Town. I see Johnny is also online. Hi, Johnny. Yeah, Karen, Augustine, great, fantastic. I wonder what we do after the chat. Tony will do little chat groups so we can, after the seminar, chat a few people together. I see Manuel is also here from Switzerland. We have got some members from Swiss Chamber in Zurich, Swiss South African chapter. Marcel is online, fantastic. I see Niels from Cape Town, Nina from Germany, so it's great. Roelof from Cape Town. So it's fantastic to see so many people. Old clients of mine, Yolandi also just came online, sold her property, yeah, some time ago. I guess probably just in time, if you look at what the market is doing at the moment, challenging times we live in. IRL is in Israel, fantastic. So it's nice to have an audience from, I would say, all over the globe, so fantastic. I have some friends and clients that say they cannot join now because they're obviously working, or in Switzerland it's typical lunchtime, 12 o'clock sharp. So they will then later on listen to the recording. Okay, we have got somebody from Lugano, that's the Italian part of Switzerland. Laurent, great. Also somebody that tries to get back to South Africa and is probably stuck. So fantastic. Klaus is on, two Klauses, Klaus Diefenbacher, friend. Then somebody from the Swiss Club, Swiss Connection we have joining. Yeah, really brilliant. Okay, you see on the screen a little poll that Currencies Direct prepared. So it would be great if you can just take a minute and answer this poll. I guess many people in these times think, where do they really want to live? In South Africa, beautiful life, friendly people, or maybe Switzerland, Germany, or somewhere else in Europe, or maybe live in both sides. It would be interesting what you feel. The best is if you have any questions for the panel, be it for Dr. Botha, Currencies Direct, or myself, that you would text it in the chat function, so we can afterwards address them, hopefully, and maybe just say for who the question is, if it is for who on the panel. Okay. Maybe I can quickly introduce Tony from Currencies Direct. So what is actually fantastic, I thought of a way in being in touch with my friends and clients. As you know, I'm stuck here in Switzerland, or you might not know. Also, here we have now the poll. Okay, so let me put on my glasses. Okay, we have a quarter, 25% that would love to rather live in South Africa or still be there. 17% in Switzerland, 4% Germany, and 8% in Europe. And quite a few people would like to be 6 months Europe and 6 months in South Africa. Okay, great. Thank you very much for this little poll. So yeah, maybe I should actually start off with how I landed up in Switzerland. So our plan was in March to go for a skiing holiday. We arrived, I still did the Arcocycle tour. That was probably the last large event in the world with 35,000 people participating. And yeah, I just got in time back to Zurich to meet up with my wife. We had our 30th wedding anniversary on that day. And then the following weekend would have gone to Switzerland. And 2 days afterwards, the lockdown came to Switzerland. So no more holidays, everything was locked down. Our daughter even was called in for active military service in the Swiss Army as a hospital soldier. So we didn't see her. We had to get our son back from Scotland, who was doing his part of his studies in Scotland. So at the end, it all turned out well, so that we had a flat here in Zurich where we are staying. And we then followed the situation in South Africa and could see how difficult it is there, and the pandemic really escalated over there. Here in Switzerland, thankfully, after about 7 or 8 weeks, it got a lot better and the economy was really put back to swing. Even in the strictest law of lockdown, some businesses actually could continue operating. So we even had painters in our apartment during the lockdown, obviously with all the safety measures. So that was brilliant. So even smaller companies could actually continue in the strictest of lockdown to operate. And I think that helped a lot for the Swiss economy not to collapse. And of course, probably difference to South Africa, the Swiss economy, they have got money, the government has got money. And so they pumped a lot of money back into the economy, immediately gave access to credit for the people living here. So that was a big, big help. Yeah, and anyway, so for me, people have asked me, how do I do work? What do I do? So I've been, of course, been very busy, let's call it from our home office here in Zurich. And thankfully, I've got a great assistant, Karen, who does my local running around. So in the lockdown, of course, there was no running around because we were not allowed to. So it did not matter where I am. But now, since the lockdown has lifted a little bit in South Africa, she can do actual viewings. And I've been doing lots of negotiations with landlords, with tenants. Some, of course, lost their jobs. So it was very difficult times for the rental market. But we, even in this difficult times, we actually managed to sell a couple of properties, some during the lockdown, with viewings happening after the lockdown, and those deals were confirmed. So it's not that the market is dead. We looked at some stats over the last couple of 3 months. So I'm not sure if we can quickly, in fact, let me share my screen. I got this stat from one of my friends, Henry Voss. He just did some stats on what happened to the property market in the City Bowl. Atlantic Seaboard is very similar, and of course this picture would be similar to the rest of the country. So the green bar is 2018, and this is now for freehold units. So you just see from 11 houses sold in January, it went right down to 2. February from 9 to 3, and in March, there was not even 1 house sold. So that is freehold. And then we have got sectional title, similar picture, where we had 80 units sold in January, it was down to 20, and from 68 to 15, and in March from 61 to 8. So you can see turnover has drastically reduced. Then also a similar picture to the prices. Sectional title, that's basically apartments. You could see the average prices came down a lot, from in 2018 from 2.5 to 2.1 million, and 2020 similar 2.1. So quite a big drop, 20 to around 20%. Then you have a similar picture for price per square meters. Then properties, of course, stay longer on the market. So it's very important, if you do intend selling, that the property is correctly priced. At the moment, the biggest turnover for sectional title is in the market under 3 million. And for houses, it's generally under 5 million. So if you have a wonderful property for, let's say, 10 million or 20 million, Camps Bay or anywhere, that market is very thin because, of course, of the lack of buyers that we have in the market. And you also see the difference between asking price, what it has sold has widened. So again, it just shows if you price correctly, you can sell. So just to give you an indication, I got a very nice sectional title unit in Oranjesicht next to the Labia Theatre that the guy paid 4.9 million, and we now reduced the price to 3.6 million. And I just received an offer just under that. So it's not concluded yet, but just to show from 4.9 to 3.6. So there we have now a very serious seller who said, I want to sell, I cut my losses, and he actually bought something else. So he's still invested. It's not with all the properties like that. The one house we sold that was on the market for 7.8, we did get an offer of 6 million, and we actually sold it for 7.2, and that in a lockdown period. So if you have a good property, good location, you still can sell at a decent price. And then, of course, similarly said for buyers that are thinking of investing, it's actually a good time. Because firstly, we have got, for foreigners, we have got the interest rate that came down a lot from what we were about 10%. We are now down to 7.5% interest rate. And on Thursday, they will sit again, and there's a good chance that the interest rate might come down another 0.25%. So for those people that want to bond and maybe hedge possible risk in the currency, you can take out a loan. Then, of course, the exchange rate against the euro, I think, and I'm sure Currencies Direct will come into that. You know, where we had exchange rate over 21. That was brilliant to buy. Similarly, say people that are wanting to take money out of the country, it was worse. So there is opportunity to trade, but I think I leave the currency talk to the experts. So I think that is maybe the time where we maybe can introduce Tony from Currencies Direct. I actually got Tony on board because I thought, yeah, that's a way in keeping in touch with my clients and friends. And Tony said, yes, surely we can do that. And I did hear Dr. Botha talk some time ago. So I spoke to Tony, said, listen, can we do something? He said, sure, let's do it. So let me hand over to Tony. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks so much for the introduction. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with Currencies Direct, you know, with the movements of currency is not restricted, but there can be some difficulties around how to do that. So I've got this a bit. Got a little slideshow here. So a little bit firstly about us, and then we can show you how we can help you to make this easier. So this is our portside building, our portside building where our Cape Town offices are, if you are in Cape Town, but we also across the world. So we are across different parts of Europe, of North America, and we've got 3 branches in South Africa. So we're a global company, we can help across the world. And we're also well out of our teenage years. We were founded in 1996, and our director back then, our founder, was quite fond of South Africa, so he opened an office in South Africa briefly after that, once he was going in the UK, and we've grown since then. So what do? Well, we do international transfers. So if you are buying a property across the world, if you are getting salary payments, you're doing investments, you are immigrating, whatever you're doing, pension, we can help you with the transfer. We do that through opening bank accounts across the world. We've got different banking partners in South Africa. We use Investec, Bidvest, or Mercantile. We use Barclays in the UK. And so we have many different banking partners that we open accounts with. We also handle all the paperwork that the South African regulations when it comes to that. I'll touch on those as well, what's required for what. And our aim is really to maximize the value of your funds. How do we do that? Well, let's say the average bank rate is, it's not quite there for the euro, but it's about there in 19. So that's the example we're taking. That's the market rate you see on Google. Now, you as a client go to the bank, you might get a margin of 1960. Might be a little bit better, of course, but you get a margin nonetheless. And as an individual, it's hard to negotiate with the bank, and there is not any negotiation power that you have. Now, us as Currencies Direct, we do very large transfers across the world, so we leverage our global flows of 132 billion, that's a rand value, and through these different banking partners, and we can get our clients a much better rate, giving you a saving on transferring your currencies. Now, so we have a much tighter margin, but there's more to it than that as well. So let's have a look at the markets briefly. Now, we all know what happens here. I'm looking at this graph again, using the euro. It looks like the rand got flew and then was called names, to put it simplified, but the rand weakened a lot. Now, there are some opportunities in that, but if we look at last year's, now we've got a client here, let's call him Charles here, and he's looking to buy a property. This might, you might relate to this, looking to buy a property in South Africa. And although we didn't have COVID last year or we went down to junk status, we can see the rand is a very volatile currency. So us as currency specialists do our best to navigate this volatile rand and to maximize the value of your funds. We do the forward contracts, rate watch systems, and many different ways. So you don't end up in a situation where you maybe bought a property or you're looking around, you only find something, you're looking in June, you find something in August, and you realize you've got a $500,000 rand less. But now there is opportunity now when we're looking at this client. Looking in January, maybe you were, if you were from Europe, you were here in January, and now you're back home. You can see the saving that has happened through the loss. And of course, this is again a euro example, but this can happen. It basically happened to all currencies. So the Swiss franc, whichever currency you have, there's dramatic improvement of the value. And as Michael touched on, there is great value amount in the property market as well if you are looking to buy. So I'll leave the rest to Dr. Botha with what's going to happen in the future and his outlook. Logistically, this is also something we help with. So incoming funds, you might know if you are living here, we have exchange control here, which basically means paperwork needs to be in order, needs to be followed. We can go into more detail than that and what's required, for example, for a third party. Let's say you have a daughter or son living here in South Africa, you want to send the money from overseas, or the other direction, and what's involved there, that's more case by case. We can take you through that. And of course, funds from high-risk countries more if you have work maybe in Hong Kong or any of these Asia, South America, Africa. You know, if there's more difficulties to getting money in and out of those countries, we can assist with that as well. Now, if you have lived longer here in South Africa and you've gotten permanent residency or you are South African, there are different types of immigrations. If you're looking to move to Switzerland or Portugal and live there, these first two, the citizenship immigration and the tax immigration, are not that popular. They don't fit a lot of people's needs. The formal financial immigration, that's the popular one. That's the one that we do as well. Where you are basically telling South Africa, I'm leaving, I'm not coming back. This is good if you have a retirement annuity. You can cash it out without any penalties. And if you are going to work in Dubai, for example, or certain places like that where there's where there's no income tax, you will be taxed in South Africa for your income, and that is no longer applied to you with formal financial immigration. So we do that as well. But let's say you are South African, I said, or you got permanent residency, you've got a 1 million rand to send out per calendar year, January to December. Above that, it's just the SARS tax clearances. We do them on a daily basis that allow you up to 10 million rand to leave the country. And above that, we also did 150 million a couple of months ago in one shot. So we do that as well. It just is a longer process. So you can always get money again out of the country. It's just these exchange control processes that need to be followed. If you are non-resident, let's say you bought a holiday house here, this is the list of things that you'll need. And of course, we will keep this proof of funds introduced if we help you move the money into the country. It gets regulated with the Reserve Bank, anything over 3 million. And then you want to keep that off the purchase title deed to show the Reserve Bank, look, I bought a property, I brought money into South Africa, I've sold it now. I bought it maybe for 3 million, now I'm selling for 5. And you can take out that full 5 million, that escalated value, minus your capital gains tax, of course. but there is no restriction of the funds coming in and out of the country. It's just required paperwork, really. And as mentioned, we collect these documents. We can open an account in South Africa, and we'll help you time the markets to really get the best out of them. Maximize the value of your range of foreign currency. Just some common questions here. As said, our service looks expensive, and it's not like a Visa agent where you think, oh, you can maybe do it yourself and you save yourself money. It's more like a bond originator that will play the banks against each other to get you a better interest rate on your bond. We'll get you a better exchange rate than going directly to a bank. And we are one of the few companies that are in Europe and in South Africa operating. There's many in Europe. You might have come across companies like us, but in South Africa, we have a very unique offering here that we can help with exchange control. Even if you're getting excellent rates with your bank, and sometimes the bank tend to be a little more lenient, we can always just do a rate comparison. We'd love to save you some money, and it doesn't cost anything. Or it'll give you peace of mind you are getting an excellent rate. Most of the time, we are able to save you money. 90% of the time, we're able to get you a better rate than you are getting with your bank. And of course, safety, we've got the bank's safety, Barclays, whatever bank we work with, and our safety as well. We've got a highest credit rating in Dun & Bradstreet, so your money is very safe. Thanks very much. That was just a few minutes from us, and thank you for listening, and I'll hand back to Michael.
Okay, great. Oh, wait a sec, Mike. Camera. Here we are. Yeah, thank you very much for this, Tony. So I have been using them as well, and very successfully, obviously. When I organize the webinar, often you have to pay for participation at a webinar. And I thought quite a few of my Remax colleagues, they have done events where they helped in Soup Kitchen or in Ladies of Love, or whatever they're all called, these different organizations. And here I'm stuck a bit away. I thought, how can I help? And I then thought of an NGO called Masaki Foundation. We already supported them. Andrea, my wife, is actually a tourist guide, as some of you know. And in a way, with this pandemic, also lost her job because there are no tourists at the moment. So hopefully that will resume. But we also then had some tourists that said, oh, we would like to do something good because they had such a great time in Cape Town. And they gave us quite a nice Euro donation, which we then gave to Masaki Foundation. And so I'm very happy that Jackie, the CEO of Masaki, is on the panel list, and she will quickly talk to us for 2-3 minutes on what they have been doing and what they have been doing prior to the pandemic, because obviously they have been active as an NGO for quite some time. So Jackie, may I ask you to come online? Okay, now you still have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Pleasure.
Good day, everyone. Masaki Foundation is an NGO in South Africa. And like many other NGOs, our purpose is to build. And the word Masaki actually means, loosely translated, it means let us build. So we have 4 programs that we run on a daily basis. The one is After School Safe Spaces. Then we have a Skills Unlimited program. We have an Addiction Awareness program. And we also have Utandiwe Children's Home near the Kruger National Park. So in the After School Safe Spaces program, what we do there, and all our facilities are for free. So we have 3 hubs, and it's in the marginalized areas. The children whose parents cannot afford after school, for the children to attend after school facilities, they come to our facility and we provide them with a meal, and we help them with their schoolwork, and we keep them busy with stimulating activities. And as you know, yes, in South Africa and in many poor countries as well, our classrooms are full. So we have about 50 children in a classroom, Your teacher cannot give individual attention to each child. So we help with our volunteers, we help the children with their schoolwork. And I promise you, the feedback that we sometimes get from the teachers is that we really help the children because they can see the difference that our volunteers make. At our one hub, we have 160 children who attend on a daily basis. And our volunteers, they receive a small stipend and they do it they do it with pleasure, and it is for them just to give back. That is our after school safe spaces. In our Skills Unlimited program, we teach unemployed youth, we teach them a skill. We started this, we launched it in 2019, and we had a very successful year. We had 101 students who came through the courses, graduated at the end of November. And of the 101, 40% of those either found employment, they became self-employed, they have their own small business. And 2 of those students actually were so interested in what we taught them, they then continued with their studies. And we have an agreement with Northern College, one of our colleges in South Africa. And they actually started in 2020, they started with a course. So that is the skills program. In our addiction program, we teach individuals, you and I, we teach people as to what the dangers are of being on a substance. Because addiction affects so many people, indirectly or directly. And it is important to know what to look out for when your friend's child is maybe not the way they used to be. Then you can prepare the mother, please just look out for this and look out for the other. So we actually educate individuals as to what to do when your child is, or your family member or a friend's child is on addiction, or actually adults, and how to cope with it. And Utandiwe Children's Home, that is a home for our children, trafficked children, orphans, abused children. They come to the home for about 30 days, and then we work with the Department of Social Development to place them with a family permanently, or sometimes we actually, the parents are then ready to take them back. So that is the 3 programs that we now manage. So then 2020 came and we were ready to start another successful and great year, and then we were hit with COVID-19. So what did we do? We closed all our hubs. We had to, because as I mentioned earlier, we work in marginalized areas, and we couldn't take the risk, not for our volunteers and also for the children. We didn't want anybody to be affected that's associated with Masaki Foundation. But we couldn't sit back. So we said, you need to do something. So we started a food relief initiative. We do food parcels and we do food e-vouchers. So I'm sure you're familiar with the term. So with our grocery stores, we can send a e-food voucher amount of from 50 Rand to 5,000 Rand to a cell phone number. The family then take that reference number to the shop, and then they can buy groceries to that value. And our food parcels, to date, we've already distributed food parcels to more than 5,000 families, and the value of the food parcel is 350 Rand. So yes, that is what we're doing. So we pack food parcels. Unfortunately, I now cannot. I'm an accountant. I'm not a technical person, and my support is not here to show you what we've done so far. But yeah, so that is what we're doing. We're doing food relief now that we're in COVID. Thank you, Michael.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jackie. That was great. I actually posted the link under the chat for the Masaki Foundation. So if you like to support it, you can just click on the link, or if you have got any questions, if you're sitting abroad and you have struggled to send it over, we obviously facilitate that. So thank you very much, Jackie, for that. So I think now is the time, I think the moment we all have been waiting for, to listen to Dr. Botha. I was just given a brief intro that I would like to read to you. I need to put on my glasses so I can read it. So Dr. Botha completed his honors and master's degree in economics via evening classes at the University of Pretoria and a doctorate at the University of Johannesburg. He has shared platform with 2 Nobel Prize winners and is previously winner of the FinMedia Economist of the Year Award. Professional experience spanning more than 40 years, including the following: economic policy advisor at National Treasury, financial editor of a daily newspaper, senior lecturer in economics at various universities, and chief economist of the SA Federated Chamber of Industries. More than 500 organizations have utilized his experience in analyzing key macroeconomics and socio-political trends in the Southern African region. He is currently the economic advisor to the Optimum Investment Group and author of 5 different columns in national and regional publications, including The Bright Side, published by Currencies Direct. Recently, accurate prediction included a decline in bond yield and the recovery of the Rand exchange rate also in 2002 and 2016, and the Springboks World Cup victory. He has participated in various competitive sports, including soccer, cricket, and parachuting, and is a member of the Gideons. Okay, I think that sums it up very nicely, and I think we're all very keen to listen to Dr. Botha, what he has to say. Thank you very much to come on board, to find the time. I know you have a busy schedule, and obviously thank you to Currencies Direct for bringing you to us. Over to you. Thank you, Dr. Botha.
Thank you, Michael. Can I just double check whether the sound is okay?
Good on my side, thank you.
Okay, terrific. Yes, it's nice. It's a privilege to be involved here today, and also to be involved with a company like Currencies Direct. Incredibly professional, and I would like to recommend to the viewers that you try to sign up for The Bright Side. It's a monthly publication. It also incorporates a separate publication called Currency Compass, and what we do, they commission this research, is we calculate on a monthly basis what the real effective exchange rate of the Rand is. In other words, you fleece out the effect of inflation, and it's a trade-weighted exchange rate against our 15 major currencies. Just as a matter of interest, until about, 15 years ago, Zimbabwe was one of those 15 countries, but it's no longer there. And the reason for that, of course, is what we call expropriation without comprehension. That's actually compensation, but it's more or less the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen right away, because I've got quite a large number of slides. What's really nice in my profession to present to a crowd like we have today is that I don't have to labor the point too much. I don't have to be a lecturer, because the slides are fairly self-explanatory, and obviously it's a bunch of bright people watching here today, so I must make 100% sure of my facts. So without further ado, there we go. Slide sorter. Michael is welcome to chip in here if there's anything wrong. So obviously, okay. When this thing, are the slides okay, Michael?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, great stuff. So when this pandemic hit us, I just have to give credit as well again to Currencies Direct for commissioning this research, underpinning these slides. Sometimes it looks like a fairly straightforward slide, but you have to sometimes dig really hard to convert it to real terms, or whatever the case may be. And the capital market mayhem hit us very hard. We saw our long-term bond yield exploding. Of course, if this line moves up, it means that people are not very keen on buying your long-term bonds, and that's a very bad sign. At the time, mid-March, I was part of a live survey amongst 7 economists on a radio show, and they were talking about 13, 14, 15% long-term yield, and I wagered a prediction that within 3 months, our long-term bond yield would decline by 300 basis points. Well, it took 4 months, but I think that's close enough. I don't always get it right, but when I do, I try to tell as many people as possible. Currencies Direct's game is in currencies, and they will be very aware of the influence of politics and of pandemics, which fortunately only happen roughly once every century. Let's hope, let's keep our fingers crossed. There you can see the impact of the Nene dismissal. South Africa is unique in this regard. I think we're the only emerging market that had a finance minister for a weekend only. But may I tell you that we're very grateful that it was only one weekend. After Pravin Gordhan was reinstated, the rand recovered again quite dramatically, and there you can see the impact of Ramaphosa's victory. Unfortunately, it became clear afterwards that there are still these two camps in the ANC, and really, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, we're adults. The fact of the matter is that Mr. Ramaphosa does not enjoy the full support of the cabinet or of the ANC. And until such time as I like to call them the Zuptas, the Zupta gang, has been, their role in policy has been diminished. We are going to stutter along, unfortunately. The good news is that our finance minister is 100% behind Mr. Ramaphosa, and both of them understand that the only way to get this economy growing again at the rates that it should is to introduce market reforms, to lessen the power of trade unions in determining policy, and to remove the obstacles to growth that are in the path of employers. And they are hell-bent on doing that. And then COVID hit us, and nobody saw that coming. At the time, the same panel of economists, many of them were talking about 25 rand to the dollar. I dismissed that as being overly pessimistic. I predicted 16 within 6 months, and I'm very close to getting to that target. Now, if you do subscribe to Currencies Direct Brightside, it's only once a month. It contains selection of relatively good news, and then, of course, the Currency Compass. You'll see the slide every month. The red line is where the rand wants to be. That's the long-term average real effective exchange rate, REER. The blue line is the actual. Now, to understand this slide, you must just remember that the blue line represents the value of a rand in real terms, not the value of a dollar. So if the blue line declines, it means, in fact, the rand is depreciating. And if it moves up, it is strengthening. Interesting observations from this slide is that the rand was overvalued since 1996 on 3 different occasions. And very importantly, it was on its way to the red line again after Ramaphosa's victory. But then the trade wars hit us, and then the coronavirus hit us. As you can see from the latest one, end of June, there has been a slight recovery. I've got no doubt in the next couple of years that this blue line will start moving up again, but it will be volatile. And that is why anybody dealing with Forex needs expert advice. And I don't have to tell you where to go to. You can just spot the top right-hand corner of the slide. They'll give you good service. In an endeavor to preempt a slide concerning South Africa's debt, so here it climbed up to 60%. In the latest supplementary budget, it's destined to go to 80%. So this is pre-COVID. We're still at just below 60. The point I want to make here is that you can add between 10 and 20 percentage points to every single country's public debt GDP ratio on this list. The secret to understanding that this is a problem but not a crisis is the fact that we have the GDP here as a denominator. And the secret is obviously to get the GDP growing, because if you have some modicum of control over your public debt, which in South Africa is the case if there is no pandemic, and you can get the economy growing, and that can be done through a variety of market reforms, then this baby will eventually stabilize and start declining. So it's not a crisis yet, and our public debt servicing costs as a percentage of gross national income is not out of synchronization with most of our trading partners. We must bear in mind, of course, if we look at all these one-dimensional slides, I'm always reminded of the definition of a statistician. And that is a person that will tell you if your head is in the freezer and your feet are in the oven, on average, you are quite comfortable. I wouldn't try that, by the way. So this is one of our big problems, is capital formation GDP ratio. And once again, it seems to be, to a large extent, COVID related, because if you look at those two burgundy bars, after Ramaphosa's became president of the country, and you compare them to the same 2 quarters the previous year, it seemed as if we were moving in the right direction. The fourth quarter is hardly ever a good quarter for capital formation because of the holiday season, especially in South Africa with our lovely summers. And then, of course, COVID hit us, and the anticipation as well, I'm convinced, led to that decline in the first quarter. But we need to step up on the gas as far as this is concerned. I don't think I need to remind the viewers of the fact that as economies are opening up again, there are what I like to refer to as more resilient sectors and less resilient sectors. So the less resilient sectors, which unfortunately has been highlighted by Michael very clearly, are real estate. We have a situation here in Tshwane, in Pretoria, where the documentation that you need to transfer properties is not forthcoming, because the minute somebody seems to have the symptoms, they all run away, which is fair, I suppose. So unfortunately, our municipalities in South Africa are not as effective as they are in Switzerland. I did a quick calculation this morning. Switzerland is one of the top 20 economies in the world, which is quite remarkable for such a small population and a country with a relatively small geographical area, especially if you don't add the mountains. So South Africa's GDP, it's exactly twice South Africa's GDP. But South Africa's population is exactly 7 times that of Switzerland. So I think you can clearly see what our problem is here. We need to create a hell of a lot more jobs than you guys. And it's an arduous task that lies ahead. But we must concentrate on the more resilient sectors to get them up and running as quickly as possible. And hopefully government will, in the next week or two, finally understand what a supply chain means. Because to close down or to prevent liquor sales, just because you're afraid that somebody will beat somebody else or make an accident, and that'll take a hospital bed, there's a whole supply chain that gets negatively affected, and ultimately a lot of people lose their jobs. A friend of mine told me the other day, he says it seems like there's quite some number of PhDs in the Command Council and in the cabinet, but that stands for past high school with difficulty. Just on a lighter note, this slide, I think, demonstrates very clearly the tremendous impact on consumer spending of the pandemic, where some industries like hotels and restaurants, transport, clothing, household goods just fell through the floor, recreation. But food, bev, there's no substitute for food. You can postpone the purchase of a house. You can postpone the purchase of a new car, but you have to eat. And in South Africa, well, you want to drink, but that's very difficult nowadays unless you like water and tea and coffee. So a cold beer after the soccer match, I don't think there's any parallel to that. Obviously, this will be corrected as we move into the future. I thought I would just give you a bit of a snapshot on South Africa's agriculture, and also just a note on SADC, the Southern African Economic Union that we have here, not as well organized as the EU, obviously. So agriculture is a very small sector in our economy, less than 2.5% of GDP. But that 100 billion rand that you see there of value added, average for the last 4 years, that turns into, if you look at the turnover through the whole supply chain, it turns into 2 trillion rands worth of turnover. So the point I'm trying to make here is that with a solid foundation in agriculture, a country like South Africa can probably look forward. This is one of the reasons why we will probably have a V-shaped recovery, depending on whether you use caps or lowercase, of course, for the V. But it is a strategic industry. I don't think I need to tell you that. And by the way, our farmers have a negative rate of protection from our government, unlike European farmers who get a huge subsidy from their governments. And we need to take that into consideration as well. The productivity of South Africa's agriculture sector is astounding. they've managed to retain more or less the same value added, that's the green bars, with a diminishing value of fixed capital stock. You can clearly see it also if you look at maize, the area planted declines, the yield just keeps on increasing. We have, as far as I'm concerned, the best farmers in the world, depending on which crop or product you're looking at, of course. Avos, bananas, same thing. Your value of production per ton harvested just keeps on rising. Bananas took a slight drop recently. Same with sugarcane, despite all the hullabaloo about sugar and stuff like that. I don't think you can make chocolates, those fine Swiss chocolates, without sugar. Orange exports as percentage of total production, just going one way. Interesting observation from this slide is that you can see the impact of the sanctions. If you look at from 81, 85, we were exporting almost 63% of our oranges, and look how that dropped during the sanction period, and look where it is right now. It's at a new record, and I believe that our total production will also be a new record this year. So if you look at the top 10 export categories for South Africa, first quarter this year, agriculture and food in the second place. And here you can see the growing gap between our exports and imports of agriculture and food. And by the way, the bulk of these exports go to Africa. This country is feeding this continent. And my advice to our government is, leave agriculture alone. Let us continue to produce as much food as possible. And if you want to transform the sector, take it easy. Do it evolutionary. Not the Venezuela or the Zimbabwe style. Then you are going to have millions, literally, of people in this continent that will be hungry at night. Just a quick word on import replacement. If you look at the imports of 6 manufacturing groups for which South Africa possesses significant export potential. Not only do we manufacture these products, and they are clothing, textile, rubber products, plastic products, products from iron and steel. What is the other one? Chemicals and chemicals. Not only do we manufacture this in this country, but we export these products. Now, this is the value of imports from Asia, mainly China, last year. We're talking about more than 160 billion rand. This is quite crazy. I mean, we're importing cement from China. We're importing sauces from China. I don't think it's a good idea. I think what we should do is to look at our larger market. Just the 9 most populous SADC countries that you see on this list total 332 million consumers. That is more than the population of the United States of America. And yes, we have a lower per capita income, but the average of these countries on this list, which are not identical to the previous slide, is in the vicinity of about $7,000. So that gives you close to 100,000 Rand per annum. The SADC region, when you talk about economic policy, we must seriously start thinking of a unified policy vis-a-vis, for instance, imports from China. A small quota on cheap Chinese imports of products that we do manufacture here. If we look at it from a SADC perspective, we can create millions of jobs in this country. Let's go over to the really good news territory. I don't think anybody would have guessed that the South African Rand would increase in the space of a month, would strengthen by 10% against the US dollar. And that's exactly what happened. So once again, obviously, we're living in times of unheard of volatility. I never thought I would be pleased to see the oil price increasing, but I am, because this is a sign of recovery. And if you look carefully here, you'll see the letter V. And that is my main theme right now, and that is that you are seeing V's all around the show. There are some institutions, South Africa, researchers, all they're doing is to try to find out exactly by how much are we going to decline. Is it going to be a 6, 7, or 8% decline? They spend every day trying to find out how much we're going to decline. My advice to these people is rather focus on those sectors that will lead us out of this recession, and try to determine what do we need to do to ensure this V-shaped recovery, because you do see the letter V all over the show. If I were to have included not before April, also the March purchasing managers indices for all of these countries, then you would also have seen a V. I didn't do that because the slide becomes too busy. But you'll see here a V for Japan, the UK, France, Germany, US, China, and I like to believe Switzerland as well. And France has just joined China, the second largest economy in the world, to be above the 50 neutral mark. So that economy is in fact expanding as we speak. And there you can see that my favorite V is the Chinese V. Just look at that. I mean, that is definitely not a U or an L or whatever else these cynics are thinking of. It has been said, of course, that a pure optimist believes we live in the best of all possible worlds, and a pure pessimist fears this is true. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. Global GDP forecasts, if I were to have included 2019's actuals here, for each of these countries, for country in the world, you will see a V again. Never in the history of the IMF has there been such a large spread between 1 year's growth forecasts and the next year. So the pandemic has hit us hard, but let's start thinking about next year and look at those sterling growth rates with China and India not even going into recession. And by the way, China is now the 5th largest economy in the world. China is number 2, of course. South African perspective, I'm not naive. Of course, household disposable income will decline this year. It will decline in real terms as it did in the recession over there, 2009, the previous one. And also probably this time in nominal terms, but it will move back into growth territory next year. A friend of mine on a lighter note told me the other day, Roelof, a recession is actually worse than a divorce because you also lose half your fortune, but you're still married, which I find rather cynical, I must be honest. What are the reasons for my optimism about the longer term prospects for South Africa, for our economy? Well, it is to a large extent related to the change in political leadership, but also to the fact that we have an increasing number of consumers in this country. And ultimately, a certain percentage of this increase in population of more than 12 million people, the increase in South Africa's population in the last 15 years is about 50% higher than the total Switzerland population. And ultimately, at some point in time, if you implement the right policies, that's the important caveat, is that you need a government that makes sure that there is infrastructure, that the roads are in good condition, that you have enough water, electricity, etc., etc. If you do supply those services, then it means ultimately more homeowners, it means more people with cars, more people with with money to spend, and more jobs. And that's what we need to start focusing on. So I've just juxtaposed our increase the last 15 years to the total populations of these other 5 SADC countries. So we have a growing market, and that is something which should ultimately, if we have the right policies, attract obviously foreign direct investment from abroad. Our balance of payments is in very good nick thanks to the financial account, and of late also thanks to the current account. We had in the first quarter this year, for the first time in 17 years, we had a surplus on the current account of our balance of payments. And the main reason for that is the fact that our foreign income receipts to our income payments to abroad have increased. It seems as if that is a structural increase. So that means that we have, at least on this score, we have fundamental stability. I just want to say a quick word about the way Stats SA deflates the GDP. So GDP at current prices, you have to deflate that to take account of inflation. I'm not sure exactly how they do that, because if you deflate GDP by the consumer price index, then you have then we had a positive growth rate in the first quarter. I went one step further and I calculated our gross national product, where you add foreign income receipts and you subtract foreign income payments from your GDP, and I deflated that by the CPI, and on that basis we had a 3.6% year-on-year positive real growth rate of gross national product in the first quarter. And my advice to Stats SA is, I don't know, there has been rumors of staff shortages. It seems that they are quite prevalent because you have created the wrong impression. They have created the wrong impression about our economy in the first quarter. We will have a recession in the second quarter, like virtually every economy in the world. But it's as if they're jumping the gun, and that concerns me slightly, obviously, as an economist. Mineral sales at current prices, I deliberately chose this slide because I see a V again here, but there's more to this than meets the eye. If you look at the mineral sales at current prices from January to May, the first 5 months of the year, then in fact, we were at a higher level in 2020 than in 2019. And obviously, we have to thank the high platinum price, and we have to thank the high iron ore price and the high gold price for that. But that's not the only reason. The other reason is that we have been producing these products, and that stands us in good stead. Two of my previous jobs were financial accountant at a bakery firm. They possessed a group of bakeries, owned bakeries, and also I was financial editor of a daily newspaper. And I learned two important lessons in those jobs. People do not like stale bread, and they don't like stale news. And I'm not giving you stale data because I've got 22 July's JSE. That was about an hour before we started our webinar. And this is a beautiful V, as you can see. Our bond yields are still a little bit higher than our most of our peers, especially Brazil, India, Russia, three of our BRICS partners, which means that they are still attractive, which means that the rand is highly likely to continue to strengthen. So there's a window of opportunity that I think Tony also tried to put across here, which viewers must please tell your friends. They can make a hell of a lot of money by investing in this country right now, as far as I'm concerned. And one of the reasons why I'm optimistic about the medium-term future of our economy is the fact that interest rates have an immensely powerful impact on economic growth. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We have the lowest prime rate now in more or less in our modern history. And the consumer price index is now at about 2.1%. There you can see the red line. That's the upper inflation target of the South African Reserve Bank. And I've been telling them for a long period of time, why are you waiting? I was pleading with them for a 200 basis point cut in the repo rate before COVID, because we had a demand deficiency in this economy. Now we have a serious demand deficiency in our economy, but it won't last forever, fortunately. So I finally got my wish, but for the wrong reasons. And I got more than the 200 basis points, and tomorrow we'll probably get another 50 I'm hoping for, but the consensus is 25. And we must exploit that opportunity, because there is an inverse correlation between lending rates, that's the red line, the real prime rate, and GDP growth. If you go one step further, just to explain or to demonstrate this, there's a positive correlation between durable consumption. I've used new vehicles as a proxy, and properties are usually also a proxy, but it depends in what market category they fall. So there's a slight lag, but there's a positive correlation, and there is a predictable negative correlation between lending rates and durable consumption. So what happened to mortgage loans and the property market in South Africa? Well, fascinating slide, because it defies theory to some extent. Initially not, because here you see the prime rate, the red line, declining, real prime, and you see mortgage, the real value of mortgages, just rising at a spectacular rate. The property market in South Africa was totally undervalued at the time. Many people had vehicles that were worth more than their properties. That changed eventually, obviously. And then what happened is that many yuppies, or the correct term is actually yumpie, young, upwardly mobile professionals, were buying second, third, fourth properties to rent out. They burnt their fingers during the recession over here, when the prime rate in real terms increased again, and that lasted for quite a while, despite the fact that under Jill Marcus's tenure as governor of the Reserve Bank, the prime rate came down nicely. We had growth again. It stabilized, but then unfortunately, we had a new monetary policy committee who were all appointed by Mr. Zuma. and they thought that the way to grow our economy is to increase the prime rate. The average real prime rate went from 3% to 6%. The maths is not intimidating. That is 100% increase in the cost of financing your debt. And it was, I must be very careful with my choice of words here. It was ludicrous. I can think of choicer words as well. The market did start improving again the value of mortgage loans, and then obviously COVID hit us, which is not good, very bad, in fact. So I was also always I was wondering what could have happened to the value of mortgage loans if COVID had not happened, and we had a return to a more growth-orientated interest rate scenario, 3.7% average real prime, as opposed to the 6% where it went to under the new MPC. And we ran an econometric model. Prof. Ilse Botha from UJ, no relation of mine, no nepotism here. She was van Rensburg 25 years ago, my best student I ever had. But she, soos ons in Afrikaans sê, sy het reg getrou, she married the right guy. Also no relation of mine. And as you can clearly see, mortgage loans, if it hadn't been for COVID, were certainly bound for an increase, and the property market recovery was on the cards. It is still on the cards, but we're going to have to wait at least another 3 to 6 months. I think the next property boom is around the corner. If you look at our GDP growth forecasts of major institutions, including the Optimum Investment Group, who have a close relationship with Currencies Direct, the same thing as the IMF, negative growth big time this year, positive growth. The consensus for next year amongst these economists now is above 3% real growth next year, and next year is less than 6 months away. The foundations are being laid right now. The power of interest rates, I'm just about finished. I just want to say something about that. So we also ran an econometric model just prior to COVID, where we asked the model to tell us what would South Africa's GDP have been today if the real prime rate had stayed at 3% and not moved to an average of 5.3%. That 5.3% is the average real prime rate after Jill Marcus's departure. Before, when she was governor of the Reserve Bank, it was 3%. And the model told us that our GDP in South Africa would have been 560 billion rand larger. That's R500 billion than it is today. And I don't think we must underestimate the power of low interest rates. We do obviously need to open up this economy. Why people are allowed to smoke marijuana, which they plant in their backyard, but not stuyvesant, is beyond me, quite frankly. There's some irrationality here. Why people can't hop in a car and go to a guest house in Mpumalanga or visit the Kruger National Park, if all the health protocols have been taken, is absolutely beyond me. It is as if our government, or this command council at least, don't trust the private sector enough. Now, it should be the other way around, you know, if you think about the electricity in the potholes. So certainly, the promise of Mr. Ramaphosa to work closer together with the private sector, that is still not bearing the fruit that we would like to see over here. The agenda for economic recovery, my last slide. Once this thing is over, or even as we open up the economy, we have been promised these type of reforms. I don't want to elaborate too much on the slide, but certainly there are ways and means through which we can get to a 3-4% growth rate next year. It may mean that the tripartite alliance, the ANC, COSATU, and the Communist Party that is disbanded, which will be a very good thing as far as I'm concerned. You know the definition of a communist, I hope. It is somebody who's got nothing but he wants to share it with you. So as far as I'm concerned, the ANC should drop those people. And I'd like to leave you with words of wisdom spoken 400 years ago. 400 years ago by Francis Bacon. I would just like to include one or two words. A wise man and woman will make more opportunities than he or she finds. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Doc. That was really interesting, very educational, and yeah, I guess some of us will have to look at the recording so that we really can grasp all the information we got from you. So I think that was really useful. Thank you very much. Sorry, we're going slightly over time. I see there's one or two questions that came through, and if you don't mind, I would like to share them quickly with you. The one is, it says, you mentioned earlier South Africa imports so much that could be produced in the country. Can you give some more examples other than cement? That is from Law.
Well, yes. My advice is if you Google SARS, SA Revenue Services, just be careful of them. I believe they're more dangerous than serious acute respiratory syndrome, quite frankly, with the same acronym. But if you go to customs and you scroll down quite a while, you'll get trade statistics. And if you click on that, you'll find the latest trade statistics cumulatively from January to May for every country in the world. And you will notice that there is not one single of the group of the 91 standard industrial classification sectors, not one single one that we do not manufacture in South Africa, and we export also every single one of these groups, but we also import every single one of them. So it's not just cement. I just used that example, but it's products. It's virtually every conceivable product that you can think of right now. If you go, you can test this. Go into a shop and pick up and see if you can find the country of origin, and 9 out of 10 times it comes from China. It's actually shocking because China does not adhere to the World Trade Organization's protocols. So we are entitled, any country in the world is entitled to slap a quota on Chinese imports. Now, I'm not anti-China. I'm anti-communism, make no mistake about that, big time. But the fact of the matter is that we need to really start thinking about our own industries in this country. Import replacement has been the anchor of industrial development for every single country in the world. And South Africa did very well in that regard. I mean, we're exporting vehicles to Europe made in South Africa. So we have the ability, but we just need a little bit of protection from products from China, which effectively are being dumped here because they are produced with government aid in China. And it's difficult to prove because they are parsimonious with their information in that country. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question. What is with increase in challenges available? Only generally available education creates the consumer's request in a 50 million probably growing population. Not sure. What is with increases in challenges available? Only generally available education creates the consumer's requested in a 50 million growing population.
I'm not 100% sure if I understand that question, but
yeah.
Our population, in fact, is now more than 60 million.
Okay.
And that excludes roughly, rough estimate from the Institute of Security Studies, 10 million people from Africa that are visiting us, in inverted commas. So we have a huge population. What has happened during COVID, of course, is that whether you thought, people that thought, well, you know, the fourth industrial revolution, it's not going to hit me. I'm close to retirement. It's been thrust upon us now. So digitalization has become absolutely the norm now, and the education in the science, maths, technology sort of focus groups has become such an important focus in South Africa. And if our government were smart, they would collaborate with the European Union member states to find out whether we can't have an influx from time to time. Obviously, this will be regulated, of postgraduate students in maths and science and technology and information technology especially. Students at universities in Europe that want to do a gap year in South Africa to come and teach our teachers something more about these subjects. Because the fact of the matter is that in many South African schools, hundreds of South African schools, you have maths teachers that don't understand maths. I mean, this is a fact. This is not fiction. We must call a spade and start fixing these problems. There's so much we can do if we work closer to Europe. But what does our government do? No, they bring in Cuban doctors to do work that a first-year medical student in South Africa can do. They must drop the ideology and become more pragmatic with their policies. And I hope they'll do that under Ramaphosa. Otherwise, we've got problems.
Okay, thank you. There was another question. Any forecasting on the role of IPPs and Eskom going forward?
The IPPs, I think, are going to have a field day. If you look at these 55 projects that were announced about 3 weeks ago during the Sustainable Infrastructure Symposium, quite a large number of them are in the renewable energy sphere, and it seems as if the relevant minister has seen the light. He seems to be conducive to removing the obstacles. One of them would be to allow municipalities to procure electricity from whomever they want to. I know the Western Cape and Cape Town, they are involved in a legal challenge as far as this is concerned. I can see that happening shortly, so that is a huge growth area. As far as Eskom is concerned, one can only hope that if they expedite the renewables. I mean, this country, wind from the Eastern Cape, solar from more or less the whole country outside of the Western Cape in the winter, of course, is the answer for the future. If you look at what some European countries have done by switching more than 50% of their energy to renewables, and I'm talking about countries where it rains a hell of a lot and the sun doesn't shine remotely as much as in this part of the world, the future is looking bright. But we will have limited load shedding still for a while. It does create help other industries like generators and UPS. I've got my UPS yesterday, by the way. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think maybe a last question. I think if there are more questions afterwards, maybe you can still put in a text box and we can possibly answer them at a later stage. The question is, how do you predict the unemployment rate to develop?
Unemployment is arguably our biggest single problem, and but it's a structural problem, because I'm guessing that 90% of the people in this country that are unemployed will battle to find employment outside of really very menial tasks, which will be in shorter supply relative to the rest as we move into the future. So the only way to really deal with this problem is with a basic income grant, which we are now implementing on a part-time basis. We cannot afford that on a full-time basis unless we subsume the child support grant into the basic income grant. And my advice to government is, don't give people money to have more children in this country. Give them money because they don't have money to buy food. What has happened now is you are incentivizing teenage pregnancy, and that is also a fact. So there is a solution at hand as far as this is concerned. But let's get cracking on creating jobs. You can do that through construction. When we had declining unemployment, when we had spectacular growth, 5% real GDP growth, 4 years running, that's when I won that competition, by the way. I'm an optimist. I can only win it in a good year. We built 3.2 million RDP houses. But that whole program just ground to a halt under the disastrous tenure of Jacob Zuma and his cohorts. And to turn that ship around is going to take a while. But the beauty of construction is labor intensive. Most of the cement we use in Africa is made in Africa, only a little bit from China. Stop those damn imports as far as I'm concerned. So we can get cracking on that if we dedicate a small bond issue specifically to this purpose and make 100% sure that the Zupta clan does not administer this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Doc. I would say, yeah, let's get on Tony. Thank you, Tony, for coming in as well. And of course, thank you to Jackie for showing us the NGO, giving us a little bit more insight. As you could see, we had posted the web link for it. So if you wanted to support it, which I encourage, would really be fantastic, especially for those that are maybe abroad and have got, because like even 20 Swiss francs or 20 euros is already a lot more in rands and can give certainly a couple of food parcels. So that would really be appreciated. And yeah, Tony, thank you for bringing Doc Botha on board. It was very interesting. Thank you very much for your time. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for organizing.
Sorry, your mic is a bit challenging.
Hear me?
It's not great, the quality of the mic.
Laptop, is that better?
A touch better, yes.
There we go. All right. So we did promise a breakout room networking session.
Johan Brink also came online and said thank you. And I just wanted to use the opportunity to wish him all the best for his birthday. So that he even took time to join us on his birthday. And he's very busy as a doctor, doing a lot of good work. So thanks for being part of it as well. So yeah, I guess to join the breakaway rooms, we just have to go on Zoom and add the ID and all of that as per the instruction. And we will possibly send out a link for the recording. Okay, Tony has already answered that. So yeah, thanks everyone. And looking forward for those that still have a few minutes that we can do a chat one by one or a few together. Would really be cool. You can tell a little bit how you are doing. Would be great. And again, thanks again to Jackie, Tony, and Dr. Botha.